So, the management of anger has become recognized in recent years as vitally important to families and also throughout society. And anger that turns to rage and then to violence creates headlines that range from school shootings and terrorist attacks to family violence. And even on the smaller scales, children and adults who cannot control their tempers are going to create pain for themselves and also the people that are around them. And anger is also a natural part of life. So, what we should, or what do we make of this? It's complicated. It's an extremely complicated emotion. And maybe this lesson will give you a new perspective on a really old subject. So, anger is an emotional and also a physiological response to frustration. So if an important need or want or desire is blocked for us, our bodies and emotions react with intense feelings that we often label as anger. So, for example, a caveman who walks through the woods comes upon a fallen tree that's blocking his path. On the other side of the tree are some berries that he wants to pick and eat. So he strains to push the fallen tree aside, but he isn't strong enough, and he becomes frustrated at the thought of not reaching his goal. And his frustration produces changes in his body that enable him to lift the fallen tree and hurl it aside. So anger is one of those emotions that triggers that ancient human instinct. It's the fight or flight response. And this causes our brain to release chemicals that make us feel stronger and faster and ready to take action, whether it's to fight danger or to run from it. And in primitive times, this added power and focus helped us to survive when problems could be settled by either being stronger or running faster than someone or something else. So we have the old brain versus the new brain. And the old brain is the fight or flight, feed or breed part of our brain located at the back of our brain. So anger originates in the more primitive emotional brain, and that's the brain of the early humans. But over time, as the rational brain evolved, so did human intelligence and societies that were based on law. And modern humans, that's us, we have the ability to manage our emotions and handle problems with solutions other than just brute force. And even in modern societies, anger sometimes pays off. Rudolf Dreikurs observed that people don't lose their temper, they use their temper. And what he meant by that was that some people sometimes they use anger to intimidate others into giving them what they want. And since anger is often accompanied by violence, this intimidation can sometimes be effective. But it does carry a really heavy price. Anger that's used to bully damages relationships, and it's hurtful. And even worse, it can lead to violent behavior and also crime. So our own angry feelings tell us that one of our goals is being blocked. And they clearly send the message, act. Don't just sit there. Get up. Do something. And if you do something too soon, you can often solve the problem before it gets worse, before you blow up. And if you don't act, but you try to ignore the message, several things could happen. One, the problem might go away by other means, but this is a risky and uncertain possibility. Two, your anger may grow in intensity until it propels you into action, which is likely to be desperate, unthinking, and potentially violent. Or three, your anger is going to fester internally, and then it's going to express itself in unexpected ways like headaches, rashes, ulcers, even heart attacks. So, how do we use our anger positively? Well, since anger is this natural response to frustration, and it can give us the motivation that we need to do something about the event or the behavior that's causing that frustration, our goal in handling anger is not to stop getting angry, but we need to learn to use our anger in a positive way and teach our kids to do the same thing. And when you find yourself angry, there's 4 steps that we can use to just not lose it. And the first is to acknowledge your anger early when it's still small. we don't want to wait for our anger to get so intense that it overwhelms our thinking brain. So we need to catch it early so that we can still take positive action. And we can do that by paying attention to some of the cues that we kind of experience when we are getting angry. So this is going to be some of the physical cues, like you feel your heartbeat racing, you're starting to get hot. Some of the behavioral cues, you may start pacing, or you notice that your jaw is clenched, or your fists are clenched, or you're puffing your chest out, or if you're sitting down, you stood up to make yourself look taller. Those are some behavioral cues. If your thinking has turned into very negative thought processes, or you're visualizing things, having fantasies of maybe hitting someone, then that is a cue that our anger is starting to escalate. So when we catch it, when it's still small, then we can do something about it. And then the second thing is to hit the imaginary pause button in your think, feel, and do cycle. So just imagine this button. It's just like a pause button on your video player. Right before the do step in your think, feel, do cycle. So as soon as you notice yourself becoming angry, and before you say or do something that you may regret later, hit that pause button and think about what it is that's triggering your anger. And then the third step here, if it's necessary, use self-calming techniques to reduce your anger. Some people just have a short fuse. So the part of the brain that responds to the threats with anger produces chemicals so quickly that they flood that rational brain before the brain even knows what's happening. And these people need to learn how to calm themselves down before they take action. And if your child has a spirited temperament, then they're probably going to need help in that area. So some self-calming methods are going to include deep breathing. So this is like a 4-4-6 method where you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and then you're going to breathe out through your mouth with your lips puckered like you're blowing through a straw for 6 seconds. So in through your nose for 4, hold for 4, out through the mouth for 6. You could take a time out, not as a punishment, but as a calming break. You can count to 10 or 20 or 100. Have somebody hold you gently or talk in a low, calm tone. And if it's our children, we want to just hold them. I find that it's really helpful to bring my child in really close to my chest and have his head on my chest so that he can hear my heartbeat. That's very soothing and calming for them. We talk in a low, calm tone of voice and just let them know that it's, let's just breathe, take a few deep breaths. Let's think this through. Another thing we can do is take a warm bath. And then the fourth step is to solve the problem or change your thinking about the problem. If it's not a solvable problem, it's not within your control to solve, change how you're thinking about the problem. This step is going to require your thinking brain. So either hit the pause button first or calm down before you're acting. And then you can use your anger to help you find a solution to the problem. But again, if there's no solution to the problem, then we just have to think about a different way of thinking about the problem. You know what? When there are things where I'm like, I cannot stand this, I can just kind of change my way of thinking to, I can tolerate what I don't like. And because children are usually more primitive in their expressing of the emotions, they're often going to resemble a caveman when expressing their frustration or their anger. And tantrums and hitting are fairly common with the young children. But it's increasingly important in these days of zero tolerance for aggressive behavior that we teach children that violence is not an okay way to solve a problem. In addition to teaching them to using the 4 steps that I just taught you to use their anger effectively, you can also model good anger management. So the way that you handle your own problems and frustrations will provide a model for your children. So think about this. Do you fly into a rage, like hurling insults and humiliating remarks? Or do you strike out at others? Or do you sink into a depression? We can also help them find more effective forms of expression. So for example, here, you have the right to feel the way that you do, but in our family, we don't scream and blame. We look for solutions. Or, I can see that you're angry. Can you tell me with words instead of hitting? Or, when you get angry at me, please tell me without calling me names. I don't call you names, so please don't call me names. And you can also remove yourself from the power struggle. When children have tantrums, you can acknowledge their anger, but at the same time, take the wind out of their sails. But you can also take the wind out of your sails. Don't try to overpower the child. Withdraw and sit. This action says to the child, I am not intimidated by your show of temper and will not give in, but I won't punish or humiliate you either. And the result is that children who get neither a fight nor their way after throwing tantrums will usually find more acceptable ways to influence people. If you need a quiet place to withdraw from a power struggle, try the bathroom. It's the one place where a little bit of privacy is usually expected. And for spirited children and other kids who have trouble calming themselves, stay with them and help them self-calm. Then work at teaching them self-calming methods later. We can also use the FLAC method. In situations where a child's tantrum interferes with the rights of other people, like in a restaurant or, when there's company in the home, you can acknowledge that child's feeling and remind the child of the limits. We can offer an alternative and follow through with logical consequences. So we could say something like, hey, I know you're angry about having to go shopping with me, and I'll admit that it isn't much fun. And still, we do want to eat dinner tonight, so we need to get this done. How about you help me out by putting the food in the cart? And that will make it go faster, and then you can help me pick out some of your favorite desserts. And if the child continues to act out his anger, we can add a logical consequence like, hey, Dennis, you can either calm down and help me shop, or we're going to have to go sit in the car until you can. Then we definitely won't have time to stop by the park. Children have to learn that there are consequences for violent and aggressive behaviors. And the child who acts out his anger by breaking something can help pay for its replacement. The child who hits or bullies can be removed from other kids for a period of time to think about how they can make it up to the other person. And as with all logical consequences, stay calm, and be firm when delivering those. So your goal is not to hurt the child, which may just begin the revenge cycle, but rather we just want to teach them. And lastly, we need to allow our child to influence our decisions. When a person feels powerless to influence an authority, frustration gives way to anger and rebellion. So if you allow your child to influence your decisions, they're not going to be as likely to resort to such unconscious tactics as bedwetting and soiling or stomach disorders, just to name a few. And so the method that your child uses to influence your decisions will be influenced by what you allow to work if you give in to tantrums and whining and tears. The child is going to learn to use those tactics again. And if you redirect your child to express their anger respectfully, listen to their arguments, and sometimes change your decisions, then your child learns the important skill of negotiation.